Hello and welcome. I'm Shalini Verma. Forests are one of the Earth's greatest natural resources. They are key to supporting life on Earth. 8,000 years ago, half of land's surface was covered by forests. Today, these areas represent less than one-third. There is a greater need to safeguard these symbols of life, and with the objective to create awareness about the depleting forest cover throughout the world, March 21st is observed every year as International Day of Forests. The United Nations celebrates the annual event with a theme that addresses the current issues related to forests and the citizens' involvement in helping to preserve the forests. This year, the theme is Forests and Education.
India is a country of mega diversity. Officially, 20% of India's geographical area is under forest cover. But the rising conflict between conserving forests and developmental projects poses a big challenge in managing the country's forest resources. Rising population and urbanization puts enormous pressure on forest land, especially for extraction of forest-based industries. There is a dire need to educate people before we take a step forward to protect our forests. India faces enormous challenge when it comes to climate change that directly impacts the survival of planted saplings. The gradual extension of dry areas and desertification is yet another challenge that needs to be tackled with proper policy interventions. When challenges pose problems, India's traditions throw up answers. Age-old traditions often have answer to forest conservation. These tried and tested innovative pursuits may show us the way to make our forests live longer.
Forest cover varies across different areas in the world. Some countries are managing to restore their forests while others continue to lose them. Although deforestation is shown to be slowing down, about 13 million hectares of forests have been destroyed globally ever since 2000. Why are we allowing them to disappear? That's the question we are asking today in the program, and joining me on the panel is Dr. Monica Kaul, Assistant Professor, Hansraj College, and Dr. Ambika Sharma, Associate Program Director, WWF India. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let's first start talking about the forest, their significance, and also the significance of this day, the International Day of Forests. Dr. Kaul.
21st March is considered to be the day when we celebrate forests. Initially it was the National Forest Day, International Forest Day, but finally we came out with the draft amendments. UN Security Council, Food and Agricultural Organization, they decided that in order to have lay importance to the forest, we should have a commemorative day wherein we can talk about what is the importance of forest, and also teach our future generations, people across the board, all the stakeholders, what is the importance of the forest to us, because we think that we are at the helm of the affairs in the nature altogether, and we have every right to do whatever we want to do. So 21st March, it is also, equinox. We say equinox is when at the end of the darkness there is a light. So 21st is also the vernal equinox in southern hemisphere. So that was the reason probably they said that we have done enough of destruction to forests. Let us regenerate ourselves and see that there is a light at the end of this equinox and look forward to protect and preserve our forests.
Is it really translating into the action, the seriousness that has been shown, articulated by designating a certain date only to create awareness and ensure that we are on the list of all those important days? Is it really translating into actions?
See, International Forest Day or World Forest Day, what we call it, has been very effective in many terms, because all over the world, when people have data on table, they have to serve this to the international organizations, to the parent countries where the forest cover is of significant importance. Forests are like lungs, for any nation. So if you are not aware about what's happening, and if you don't have a stock taking, this day is actually a kind of a day when you do auditing in a sense. So when you know that you're being audited, and when you know that these are important for the preservation of biodiversity. These are important for survival of the mankind. These are their importance is for the sustenance of the living beings on this earth. This day actually is a reflection to all that.
One of the key things when we speak of the damage that we have done to the forests, the entire attention goes to deforestation. The fact that there are individual estimates, there are assessments which have been done which indicates that about the equivalent of about 5 football pitches disappears every minute globally. That's the extent of deforestation. But is that the only threat to forest, or is there more to it?
Yes, please. So there are several threats, but if you don't mind, can I just come in on what we were discussing earlier? And I think one of the other things that's very important for days like this is that while it's about symbolicism, what the day allows for is that it gives you a fixed attention, and therefore campaigns do very well. There's an Earth Day where symbolically all buildings, switch off. Now, one would argue that that is symbolicism, but it draws attention. And therefore, I feel it's very important to have international days. Just to add to the science
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yes. The challenges, the threats to forests.
Coming back to the threats, there are the very obvious threats, which is from the deforestation fronts faced by commodity extraction, whether it's plantation palm oil, whether it's timber pulp paper. This is the more traditional sort of threats. Increasingly now, there are development pressures that are affecting forests, which are not within the protected regime. When I say protected regime, it means a protected area or a sanctuary that is legally protected, and therefore you can't do very much within it. But there are forests outside of these protected areas, which are reserved forests, which are far more threatened because they don't have a legal protection. So fragmentation is the obvious, land use change is the other, a lot of infrastructure development. So we are a growing country, and therefore development is inevitable. And there are expectations, there are aspirations, but at the same time, I think a lot of that can be done sustainably.
Fine. We'll take a very short break now in the program. Stay tuned for more on the other side of this break.
डीडी साइंस भारत सरकार के विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी विभाग और दूरदर्शन की संयुक्त परियोजना है। इस परियोजना में सोमवार से शनिवार शाम 5 से 6 बजे तक विज्ञान समर्पित कार्यक्रम के लिए दूरदर्शन के राष्ट्रीय चैनल पर 1 घंटे का समय निर्धारित है। डीडी साइंस भारतीय संस्थानों और विज्ञान की प्रयोगशालाओं में विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी के क्षेत्र में होने वाले नवीनतम विकास और देश व दुनिया के विज्ञान से संबंधित कार्यक्रमों और समाचारों को दिखाएगा। ये कार्यक्रम विज्ञान प्रसार द्वारा कार्यान्वित किया गया है। अधिक जानकारी के लिए कृपया विज्ञान प्रसार की आधिकारिक वेबसाइट www.vigyanprasar.gov.in पर जाएं।
Welcome back. Rising population poses an enormous pressure on forest land. The conflicts between conserving forests for generating ecosystem services and diversion for developmental projects has emerged as one of the biggest challenges in managing the forest resources. But one of the key things, Dr. Sharma, is the fact that we need to understand the exact forest cover in India, and whether, whatever targets have been set, how close we are to that. For that, of course, what kind of data calculation, what kind of data collection is being done, what mechanisms are there? If you can please throw more light on this.
Sure. So data is always a very contentious topic to begin with. So we have national bodies and agencies, including FRI, the Dr. Gaul, Professor Gaul mentioned.
Forest and Climate Change.
Yes.
However, what I would like to draw attention to is that there is a difference between forest cover and forest density.
Okay.
And often, and very simplistically putting it, forest cover is the canopy cover. So if there is an aerial image that is taken and there is canopy cover, we often falsify that as healthy forest or healthy forest cover. There is a difference between a healthy forest and just canopy cover. And then there is a difference between density of forest and just the canopy cover. So when as a country we make claims about increase in forest cover, I think we should do that with some degree of caution, because there's a lot that needs to be done. One of the things that we've signed up to is the Bond Challenge, and we're one of those few countries actually who's taken up the challenge, including things on forest landscape restoration in degraded areas. So I think there is potential for recovery, and we are headed in the right direction. Okay, Dr. Kaur.
When you're talking about the techniques which are being used, geographical imaging is one thing which is done, remote sensing analysis is another thing, but that is also done with the on-field studies like phytosociological studies. We do density, basal cover area, abundance, frequency of the forest vegetation, and then the data is actually accumulated together. But again, the focus is, anything green cannot be a forest. What we have to emphasize is on the trees which have which are deciduous mostly, which have broad leaf area, because when we are talking about the services which a forest does is carbon sequestration. When we are talking about the services a forest is doing is oxygen for all of us. When we are talking about the forest as a cover, it is a habitat for biological diversity. A forest is like 80% of the forest is all organisms. I mean, so many of them there. So that forest is a forest where you have a mixed kind of a vegetation, where you have deciduous trees along with shrubs, you have climbers.
And it is entirely different from tree cover, right? This is entirely different
from tree cover.
So there are three different terms here. Forest density is one thing, forest cover is another, tree cover is entirely
cannot
different.
be cover. Yeah, there are many aspects to it, and the data, actually the Forest Survey of India which provides is a cumulative data from various sources. So most of it is actually okay, but somewhere it is skewed in many places.
And what is the forest cover presently in India?
It is 23 point something. I mean,
okay,
and exact figures. But if you look at the data from other agencies, except for Forest Survey of India, which is mandated to give data every 2 years. There are many claims which say there is 30% of the forest is of the area is under cover, which is not true, because there you consider lawns and any green area as a forest. So many a times when you say that you have an increase in a forest cover, that is because you have a woodland.
So every
woodland
patch,
cannot be a
every
forest.
green patch becomes a part of that.
See, for example, a monocultural green patch is not a forest.
Okay.
To science, it is not a forest, because a monocultural of eucalyptus doesn't sustain biological diversity. It doesn't do everything which a native, pristine, mixed forest would do for you in terms of ecology.
One of the things which I want to understand from you is that when you speak of preserving our forests, saving them, is it that to whatever extent the deforestation happens, maybe double the rate of that afforestation should take place? Is that the way to manage it or strike that balance, or
no?
No, that's not the way.
That's not the way to
so
do it.
Please tell me, what is it basically? How can one strike a balance here?
So I don't think the balance is between deforestation versus afforestation. Deforestation is a phenomena in itself, which is because of a lot of developmental activities, but also certain natural phenomena. Afforestation can only happen in patches that have been completely degraded, but there is also a concept of natural regeneration. So there are also stretches where you just need to leave them by itself, and nature finds a way to come back. And just taking cue from your earlier question, I'd also like to draw attention to a concept that's increasingly gaining momentum, which is around the concept of sustainable landscapes. Because forests, while they are a confined sort of entity, when you're looking at land use patterns and land use types, there are no longer very pristine, large stretches of forest left in the world. There are very few indeed. In fact, in India, Madhya Pradesh is probably the only patch that is left that has contiguous forests. So increasingly, we need to look at this interface between human demands, human existence, and natural resources. And that's where you strike a balance. So the balance is between how much you draw and extract and allow for the ecosystem to regenerate, as opposed to just mindlessly planting. Because a lot of the interpretation around afforestation, unfortunately, is also plantations. And that's not a route we want to take. We want to stay away from that.
monocultures is not the nice idea. Ecological restoration is a very good practice, because when we regeneration, afforestation, replantation, they are all, you know, human driven interventions.
That's right, yeah.
But when you are
Allow the
talking about,
nature to take its own
restoration
course,
through intervention, because you know, we have done so much of damage that a forest cannot restore on its own. We can just intervene at the initial step of succession, so building on the substratum, because then you can leave it on its own, because once there are few species, the new species will come in, because the environment, the soil becomes feasible, it becomes more accommodating for the other species
and
to come in.
how important does it become, or at the same time how challenging does it become in the light of the threats posed by climate change?
See, actually, if you focus on natives, for example, you know, whenever there is any afforestation program, schools go for afforestation programs, saplings are distributed all across, millions of saplings have been distributed in the past few years. But why are we not getting the results? Is because we don't look at which tree to grow where. The soil is the substratum. If you don't know your substratum where your tree is going to grow, how will it succeed there? You know, you have to see, because plants have their own adaptations to the soil, to the nutrients, to the light, of course. So you have to do a very cautious selection procedure, wherein you will select species for a damp habitat, where you'll do selection for a desert kind of an habitat. So that has to be the first step when you are doing any afforestation thing, and then let nature play its role. And native species, I'll emphasize that, you know, in Delhi what remained focus was on evergreens, because you know, they don't need a lot of maintenance. But you have to see what was growing in Delhi besides this rampant cutting of the trees started. So jamuns, for example, amrak, Aeroveha diffusa is one example. Syzygiums should be grown. All neems and melias, and you know, you can have a color to the forest.
Now we'll take a very short break now in the program, and after the break we look at the initiatives which have been taken to protect forests, the fact that we have a forest policy also in place and there are laws that govern this sector, but how effective they are and what more really is needed to be done.
डीडी साइंस भारत सरकार के विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी विभाग और दूरदर्शन की संयुक्त परियोजना है। इस परियोजना में सोमवार से शनिवार शाम 5 से 6 बजे तक विज्ञान समर्पित कार्यक्रम के लिए दूरदर्शन के राष्ट्रीय चैनल पर 1 घंटे का समय निर्धारित है। डीडी साइंस भारतीय संस्थानों और विज्ञान की प्रयोगशालाओं में विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी के क्षेत्र में होने वाले नवीनतम विकास और देश व दुनिया के विज्ञान से संबंधित कार्यक्रमों और समाचारों को दिखाएगा। ये कार्यक्रम विज्ञान प्रसार द्वारा कार्यान्वित किया गया है। अधिक जानकारी के लिए कृपया विज्ञान प्रसार की आधिकारिक वेबसाइट www.vigyanprasar.gov.in पर जाएं।
Welcome back. We depend on forests for our survival, from the air we breathe to the wood we use. Besides providing habitats for animals and livelihoods for humans, forests also offer watershed protection, prevent soil erosion, and mitigate climate change. But one of the key things about forests and ensuring that they're governed well is the fact that we have a policy in place. The policy, the National Forest Policy that came in 1988 and now it's been revisited. The new draft is ready and it was prepared last year. But let's look at the areas which the policy should be covering and perhaps fails to cover till now. If you can reflect more on this, Ambika.
Sure. So I think as argumentative Indians, we tend to question everything. And one of the things that I think has worked very well for us is that we have a very good set of laws and policies. What we're perhaps missing is the implementation, like a lot of the other sectors. And I think it's a very welcome move that we're currently revising the draft policy. And there are several organizations that are providing their perspective to that through working groups and committees. But I'll let our colleague speak out.
See, there are lots of policies, as she pointed out. We have National Afforestation Program. We have Green India Mission. As you said, we have National Forest Policy already in place. We have Forest Conservation Act in place. So what we have to see is there has to be a crosstalk between various other sectors. Like Biodiversity Act is biodiversity, and biodiversity is sustained in a forest. So you have on one hand climate change policies which have to be integrated with the forest policy, and Government of India has done certain things of late. For example, there's a lot of firewood which is taken out from the forest, but at the same time we have Ujjwala Yojana to combat, because now you have gas connections everywhere. So Government of India is looking at it from a very wide perspective. You have green energy mission where you are focusing on solar, wind, power energy, and I'm sure that if we look at it from the holistic viewpoint, and if we bring in all the people from different agencies together on a board, it is going to give us results very soon, because the forest uses in various streams, and then you have to have a sort of collaboration between the various agencies and look for the Green India mission is one thing which is going to bring us a lot of restoration across.
But coming back to in fact the International Day of Forest, the theme this year is forest and education. And in the past too, we have seen even in our policy framework, whether it's the 5-year plans which said that it's important to see forests for our survival and do whatever we can based on those themes. Looking at the theme selected by the United Nations, what would you say about the theme this year, and whatever has been chosen in the past, whether it's forest and energy or forest and sustainable cities? How do you look at that?
I think from a policy perspective, it's also important to mention that there's an intergovernmental panel on forest. And the UN in its many avatars actually addresses these concerns, whether it's the Sustainable Development Goals, which we haven't had the time to discuss, but there's all of that as well. In terms of the themes, it is a day, and you have to choose a certain focus, and forest cuts across every aspect and dimension of our life.
And that perhaps is the connection, that perhaps does answer our concerns around the development agenda, why it reflects so clearly in the country's development agenda, because it's linked to a lot of
to everything. I mean, including an individual. I mean, if you were to blow your nose into a tissue paper, stop and think where it's coming from.
Yes.
Or a bill, or any of those things. But coming to the theme for this year, I'm personally very glad that we've chosen forest and education. There are many ways in which one can manifest education. There's the more formal structured system, there's citizen campaigns, there are movements. If I were to speak for a minute from WWF India's point of view, we actually started a campaign last year called Give Up to Give Back. And this is a campaign that is a platform that's targeting individuals, and it's addressing your daily habits, and therefore how do you reduce consumption? How do you look at resources in a more holistic way? And this has to begin with you. And therefore,
Yes, please. Yeah.
So therefore, my final sort of point on this would be that what we really need and what we're missing, in addition to these kind of campaigns that reach out to you, is an experiential learning process. And what we need in curriculums is nature experiences. And there are concepts of forest bathing and others that are picking up in a very big way. I think we need more of that in our country.
See, since I'm a teacher, so I would say that one impulse from a vernal wood teaches you more of man, of moral evil and of good, than all the sages can. This was Wordsworth who wrote it very. So forest can teach you lots of things. Forest can teach you how to share. Forest can teach you how to give space to others to live in, accommodate, and give. It does so much for us. Education.
I wish
so
we really had more time to talk about it, but thank you very much for joining me in this program. It was certainly a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Well, forests have to be managed sustainably so that we can continue to benefit from this precious natural resource. You can email your suggestions and feedback to us about this show. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.